The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everybody, welcome to Unit 3 in the Lunch and Learn series. So look, I apologise for having to change this. I got a lot of requests on Friday to change it because of the holiday. There's a holiday in Brisbane around the show day, and I took the decision to change it, bearing in mind, of course, that some people couldn't attend today. But the good news is the video and the slides will be available on the learning platform, so you'll get those. But obviously you're here, so that's good news. So welcome. What we want to do, of course, I'm going to make this a fairly participatory session. So there's two things that you're going to need today that are really important. You'll need a pad and a pen because you're going to be doing some writing. I'm going to be doing a coaching session with you, and long distance coaching session, one-on-one. I won't know what I'm coaching you on, but I'm going to coach you because what I want to do is demonstrate the incredible effectiveness of the G.R.O.W model, which is ultimately what our topic is today. Now, you'll need your mobile phone as well, because I'm going to ask you to vote shortly in relation to the issue that I'm going to be coaching you on. Now, I won't know what the issue is. No one will except you, but I'm going to ask you to consider that issue very shortly. All right, so I'm going to give you a free coaching session. I'm going to demonstrate the power of G.R.O.W and hopefully then debrief you on how you might use that in relation to your coaching conversations that you have in your workplace. So that's ultimately what we're going to do today. All right, so I'm assuming I'm coming across loud and clear. I haven't got any feedback to suggest that I'm not being heard, which is good news. But if the audio is a bit fuzzy, let me know. Not much I can do about it at this end, I must say, but so far so good. So what we're seeing at the moment on your screen, of course, is the program. So we've got up to topic number 3 or unit number 3, and I hope you've had a chance to put your check-ins in place. In topic or unit number 2, we talked about this whole idea of having check-ins, regular check-ins with your team. And I hope you've taken the opportunity to do that. And if you're already doing it, I hope you've been able to inject some different topics into that. Now, I did share with you the 5 conversations framework as a potential check-in framework. And of course, you're more than welcome to use that. I shared with you some of the questions. And if you missed that session or it seems a little bit vague, of course, the learning platform's the place to go. So if you go into the learning platform, you will be able to see the questions that you need to ask. Each of those check-ins should go for about 20 minutes, but the homework was to set up a check-in situation. Now, bearing in mind, some of you may be working remotely, but you can still do those check-ins online, and I would encourage you to do so. So either way, of course, they still constitute check-ins. All right, so let's get into topic 3 today. 3 things I want to do. I want to, first of all, give you a personal coaching session, which I talked about a moment ago. So have your pen and paper ready. Also get your mobile phone ready because you're going to be doing some voting shortly. The whole purpose of the coaching session is to demonstrate to you how effective the G.R.O.W model is. And then once I've done that, I'll unpack that and explain how G.R.O.W works, when you can use it, what the advantages of it are, and so forth. And of course, that's the third item that we're going to get out of the session. So there's a few interesting things we're going to do in this session. All right, so let's get underway. Now, what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about an issue that you're facing currently at work. So I'm sure there are many issues you're facing at work. I mean, it could be an interpersonal conflict that you're having with somebody in the office or perhaps remotely even. It could be a productivity issue with one of your team members that you just can't seem to get them to be, performing to the extent that you think that they should be. It could be a career issue. It could be anything at all. But the main thing I want you to do is to focus on something that you'd like to be coached on. In other words, this is your opportunity to think through how you might deal with that issue. But it's very important you pick something. And once you've done that, if I could just ask you now, I'm just going to pause for a moment. On that piece of paper that I talked about before, could I ask you just to, in 1 or 2 sentences, just write down what the topic is? So could I ask you to do that now? So what am I coaching you on? Now, bear in mind, I'm not going to ask you to share this with anyone. This is between you and me. Your job is just to write it down so that you can focus on it. So has everybody got something? And then when you've written something down, could I just ask you to go to the question box, open it up and just type in something in the order of ready so that I know you're ready. So could I ask you to do that just for the next minute or so? Write down the topic that you want me to coach on so that you can be focused on that. Okay, so Kelly's ready. We'll just give everyone a chance to... Darren's ready. John's ready. Okay. Okay, so just to repeat that, if people are just arriving, I'd like you to write down on a piece of paper a topic that you'd like to be coached on. So I'm going to be running a coaching session with you online right now, and it's going to be confidential what I'm coaching you on, but I need you to write down something that you need to be coached on or want to be coached on. Could be an interpersonal issue, something in the workplace that really requires your attention. And then what I'd like you to do is that when you have written it down on a piece of paper in 1 or 2 sentences what I'm coaching you on, I'd like you then to just go to the question box and type in the word ready. That means that you're ready for your coaching session. So I just want to make sure everybody is at that stage first before we launch into the coaching session. So I've still got quite a few people who are either thinking about it or have actually got their topic but haven't actually let me know. So please type in your comment ready when you're ready. Thanks, Moya. Thanks, Margaret. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Lisa. So I won't be invoicing you. You get your free coaching session from me. But what I want to do, of course, is to demonstrate to you how this G.R.O.W model actually works, or how it should work. All right, we've still got a few coming through. So now the next thing I want you to do is I want you to grab your mobile phone. Hopefully it's close by. And I'm going to give you some instructions because you're going to have a vote right now. Now, let me just get this out of the way so I can explain what you're to do. Now, you'll notice up the top here, you'll notice that you're going to send a text message, all right? So what I want you to do is to go in as if you're going to send a text message to somebody, and I want you to send the text message, who you're going to send the text message to, the number you're going to send it to. So this is the number you're going to text. I want you to type in the number 61 427 541 357. So that will be the number. Now you need to have the 61 there, by the way. So 61 427 541 357. So that's the message that's the number. And now in the box, which is the message that you're going to send, you then send this message: Tim Baker, 849. Now, it doesn't actually have to be uppercase, but that's the message that you're going to send. Tim Baker, 849. Could I ask you to do that? And what that will do is it'll open up an option to vote. All right? And just give everyone a chance to get that far. So the question I'm going to ask you is this, and this is the question that you're going to vote on. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is high and 1 is low, how do you rate your level of optimism in resolving this issue? Now, this issue, of course, is the issue that you've just written down on a piece of paper. So 10 is high, 1 is low. So in terms of you resolving it, how would you rate your level of optimism? Would it be a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, and a 10? And then what I want you to do is type in A for 10, B for 9, C for 8, D for 7, 6 for E, 5 for F, 4 for G, 3 for H, 2 for I, and 1 for J. Now, as you can see on your screen, people are now voting. We don't know who it is, so it's all anonymous. We're just trying to capture a benchmark here. So could I just ask you to type in your response? And what I'm hoping, of course, is that it won't be a particularly high score, because I want you to challenge me. I want you to give me something hard to work on for you. All right, because if you give it a 9 or a 10, you're obviously very optimistic about resolving it, and that's not going to give me much of a challenge, is it? So I'm looking for something difficult to coach you on, is essentially what I'm trying to do. So at the moment, you can see the majority of you have rated it an 8, so it's probably something that you can deal with. We've got a number of people who are rating it, in fact, the same level at a 6, and we've got a number of people who are rating it as a 5. So just give everyone a chance to record a number, because this is important, because what I'm doing here is establishing a benchmark. So if you haven't voted, please do so. And just to explain those directions again, go to your text box, type in 61427 541 357. So that's the number that you're going to send your text to. The text that you're actually going to send is Tim Baker, no space, 849. No space, 849. And then you get a chance to vote, and you can vote A through to J. And the question that I'm asking you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate your level of optimism in resolving the issue that I'm going to coach you on? All right, I notice the bars haven't changed too much, so I'm assuming that everyone's voted. Now, I want you to grab your piece of paper, and I'm going to now ask you to write some answers down. Now, why do I ask you to write some answers down? Well, the fact is, I'm not sitting there next to you, or even doing this virtually. So in order for you to respond, I'm going to ask you 12 questions. So what I'm going to actually ask you to do is, instead of you responding verbally, you're going to respond in writing. So in other words, you have to actually think about the answer that I'm going to the question I'm going to ask you. So on the piece of paper that you've got, whatever the number was, forget about that. I want you now to, on the piece of paper, write the letter G. So just put a G, and then underneath G, put 1. So this will be question 1. So you write your answer to question 1 after 1. Okay, here's the question. We're ready to go? So you write down your response to this. So the first question I'm going to ask you is this. For you to resolve the issue, what will it look like? Let me just repeat that. For you to resolve the issue, what will it look like? So write down your response. So this is imagining you've got a magic wand, you've resolved this issue. Describe to me what it looks like. Just give everyone a chance to write down an answer. Question 2. So underneath 1, just write 2. So you're going to actually see a progression of questions that I'm going to ask you. So question 2 is, how will you feel when you resolve this issue? So happy, relieved, ecstatic. So what's the emotion? How will you feel? Relieved, whatever it might be, how will you feel when you resolve this? Write down your answer for number 2. That's question number 2. Question number 3. So underneath you put a 3, and this will be your question for number 3. Number 3, the question I'm going to ask you is, what will be the key indicator to know that you've resolved it? In other words, how will you know that you've resolved this issue? Bearing in mind, I don't know what I'm coaching you on, but how will you know that you've resolved this issue? What will be the indicator? That's question 3. Could you write down your response in question 3? How will you know? Can you write down your response? So if you finish your response, just be patient. I just want to give everyone a chance to go through this. It's important for you to get the sense of how this model works, and before we start talking about how you'd use it in a coaching conversation. All right, now you'll notice that you got answers to 3 questions. So underneath your answer to question 3, I'd like you to put the word are. So this is going to be a heading. Just put the word are underneath question 3. So later on, I want you to actually see the process that you've gone through when I've finished. That's why I'm getting you to do it this way. And of course, if we were doing this one-on-one, you wouldn't be writing anything down. You'd just be talking to me and I'd be asking you questions. So this is now underneath R, put number 4. So this is question number 4 that I'm going to ask you. So you just write your response to question number 4. And here is my question to you to write down for the answer for number 4. What is the main barrier preventing you from resolving this issue? What is the main barrier preventing you from resolving this issue? Could I ask you to write down question 4, please? Just the main barrier, not all the other barriers. There may be several, but what's the main barrier? Number 4, question 4. Okay, question 5. So underneath 4, so remember there are 12 questions. We're up to question 5. This is the 5th question. I want you to answer this question next to the number 5. Apart from the main barrier you described to me, what are some of the other barriers that are getting in the way of resolving this issue? Now, of course, if there's only one barrier, you can just write none. But I'm asking you, if there are any other barriers that are getting in the way of you resolving this issue, and that's question 5. Okay, question 6. So just write down 6, and then I'm going to ask you this question. Question 6 is this: how long has this issue been going on for? Right, has it been going on for 1 week? Has it been going on for a month? Has it been going on for 6 months? Has it been going on for a year? Has it been going on for several years? So write down how long this issue has been going on for. That's question 6. Question 7. Now, before you write down question 7, put another letter. So now going into 3 more questions, put the letter O. So you've just done the answer to question 6. Write the letter O underneath, and you're now going to, underneath O, write down 7. So this is question 7. Okay, so we've done 6 questions. We're up to question 7. Question 7. What have you tried so far to resolve this issue? What have you tried so far to resolve this issue? Now, if you haven't done anything, just write nothing, but I'm asking you what you've tried so far. So that'll be question 7. Okay, question 8. So underneath question 8, what else could you try that you haven't already tried? So what else could you try that you haven't already tried? So this could be something out of left field, or it's something that you've thought about doing that you haven't got around to doing. What else could you try to resolve this issue? That'll be number 8. So what else could you try? Now, if you can't think of anything, you can just say can't think of anything, but I'm asking you that. I'm opening up the possibility that there are other things you can do. All right, this is question 9. So just write the letter 9, the number 9, sorry, and here's the question for 9. So just write down the answer to number 9. Who could you call upon to help you to resolve this issue? Who could you call upon to help you to resolve this issue? Now you might say me, and because I'm asking you these questions, it could be your boss. Maybe it's an issue with you and your boss, so that might not work. But who else could you call upon? Maybe it's professional help. Maybe it's a critical friend. Who else could you call upon to help you to resolve this issue? That's question 9. Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is to write down the letter W. So we've now done 9 questions. I'd like you to write a W, and then I'm going to ask you 3 questions around W. And I'll come back, of course, and debrief you on all this in a moment. Remember, no one's going to share with me. No one's going to share with anyone what I'm coaching you on. It's completely confidential. So W. So if you could just write under the word W, if you could write down 10, because this is the 10th question I'm asking you, and you again write down your response to question number 10 when I ask it, and I'm going to ask it now. Question 10 is this. Having thought about this issue a little further, what do you think might be the next step? That's question 10. Having thought about this issue a little further, what might be the next step? Question 10. Just give you a chance to write that down, your answer to that question. Question 11. So if you could just write down 11 under it. We've got 2 more to go. This is question 11. Who could support you moving forward on this issue? Who could support you moving forward on this issue? Question 11. Okay, write down question 12. This is the last question. What is the one thing, what's the one small thing that you can do right now? That's after we've finished our coaching session, which is right now. What is the one small thing that you can do right now that can help you resolve this issue? It doesn't mean it'll completely resolve it. It's the first step. What is the first step you can take to resolve this issue right now? Question 12. All right, folks. Now, I might have gone too quickly or I might have gone too slow. Obviously, I'm not there. I don't quite know how quickly I was going or whatever. I hope you've got an opportunity to have completed those 12 questions. What I want you to do now is I want you to go to your, oops, went too far. Let me go back one. I want you now to go back to your text, you know, the text that you just sent before when you voted, you know, in terms of 1 to 10. I'm going to ask you again now, you've just completed a coaching session with me. And what I want you to do now is, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd like you to vote. How do you rate your level of optimism in resolving this issue? Yes, I'm asking you the same question, but the difference is I've done a coaching session with you. So if you vote 10, it's A. If you vote 9, it's B. If you vote 8, it's C. If you vote 7, it's D. If you vote E, F, G, H, I, J. So just vote. You shouldn't have to do anything else except just go back to where you were voting before. just give everyone a chance. At the moment, we've got a tie between, oh, here we go. This thing moves around a little bit as we go. So the most popular response now is a 6, but we've got, here we go, it's moving around. So just give everyone a chance to vote. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. They're still moving around. So let's give everyone a chance to vote. Remember, you just have to type in one letter and it'll record this. The moment you've typed that and click send, of course, you'll see it on your screen. No one will know, of course, that it was your vote, but you'll see it on the screen. Everyone voted? Okay. Now, think about this for a moment before we go any further. What I've done is I've asked you to select an issue, which you did. I've asked you initially to vote on your level of optimism in terms of how you believe you can resolve it from a scale of 10 to 1. I've now asked you 12 questions, which was my coaching session with you. And then at the end of that, I've asked you then to vote on your level of optimism. So what I want to do now is let's go back to what we voted for before. So let me just click on this and go back. And you'll notice that in some cases, of course, we don't know for sure, that perhaps some people's vote didn't change, but it's likely, of course, that some people's vote did change. It doesn't look like anyone voted below 5 this time round, but if I click on here to show the before and after, you'll notice we've got a number of people who've now voted 8. We've got a number of people who voted a 9 that perhaps didn't vote that way before. So I guess for some of you, it didn't make a huge difference. Maybe it did, but in a lot of cases, it did make a difference. So the question is an interesting one, isn't it? Think about this for a moment. My hands are tied. I can't see you. I don't know what it was that I was coaching you on. The only indicators I've got in terms of whether I was successful or not is really these 2 votes. And it looks as if, and I'll just get you in the question box. If you go to the question box there and just type in, I'd be interested to hear those of you whose response went up. All right, so you might have rated it a 5 initially and then you rated it a 7. Could you tell me why? Don't tell me what it was. Just tell me, why did it go up? In your mind, why did it go from, say, a 5 to a 7 or from a 7 to an 8? Can I just get you to type in the question box? For those of you whose vote went up in the second round, could I ask you, why did it go up? Could I just get you to type in an answer in the question box? And let's have a look and see. What were the reasons that the vote went up? Could I just get a response from people? Okay, John says, my vote went up from a 5 to an 8, which is an appreciable change, John. And John says, because I was able to think through the issue. Thanks, John. Anyone else like to share, if your vote went up, of course, why it went up? What was the main reason for it? Just type in the question box on the right-hand side. Why did your vote go up? Anyone else want to have a go at this? What was the main reason your vote went up? Now, of course, I probably, just while people are doing that, it's quite possible that I had no impact on your optimism, of course. But I can say, probably fair to say, well, I shouldn't say it actually because I don't know, but some of you may have not moved. Others of you, it might have gone backwards. Lisa says, self-realization. I am a person able to resolve this. Thank you, Lisa. So in other words, it gives you a chance to look at the issue in a structured, rational way. I think that's kind of what you're saying, Lisa, in a way. So that's useful. Okay. All right. So if anyone else wants to give us some responses there, please do. You're most welcome to do that. Let's now look at the whole G.R.O.W model and actually try and understand how it works. So what I want to do now, if you go back to what you wrote down, G up the top stands for goal, R stands for reality, O stands for options, and you'll notice that's plural, and W stands for way forward or what next. It could be either of those. So essentially what happened is that I asked you 3 questions around the goal. So where are you wanting to go? I asked you 3 questions around the R, the reality, that is where you are right now. And what that does is it creates a gap between where you want to go and where you are. The O stands for options. In other words, I was asking you 3 questions around your options. And the W, of course, is getting into action. What next? Way forward. In other words, if people aren't going to do anything differently, then nothing will change. Moya's just saying that my optimism didn't change. I realised I needed a better understanding of my problem and options to progress. Okay, that's a really interesting insight, Moya, because, you know, whilst you're saying your optimism didn't go up, the realisation you came to was that you perhaps needed to investigate the problem a little bit more and to understand perhaps what some of the options were, because it might have been a little bit more, it might be a complex issue. So in that sense, I can understand why your optimism didn't go up, because obviously you saw there was more to it than what you thought of initially. But that's not a bad thing in the sense that you realise that you've probably got to go and do a bit more investigation. So thanks for that. So this is a very powerful tool to use, and I guess what I'm trying to do there is to show you how powerful it is. Let me just explore with you what G.R.O.W is all about. John Whitmore came up with the concept of G.R.O.W in 1992. It's probably the most popular coaching methodology that's out there, and the reason why it's so powerful is that you are putting the onus of responsibility on the other person to resolve their own issue. Now, Moya just alluded to that when she gave us her response there to that. So what that means is that you're putting the onus. Now, you know what it's like. You're sitting, if you've got an office or wherever you're sitting or working, you've got people that come to you and they want you to spoon feed them at work, don't they? People will come to you, they'll ask you questions, you're thinking in your mind, you should know the answer to that, but nevertheless, because they're there, you think it's the right thing to do, and of course you respond to their question. You help the person. But the problem with helping the person is what? Well, if you help them, of course, you might get a bit of a sugar hit that you feel that you're being very valuable, but the other person in their mind is just becoming more and more dependent upon you. And sometimes we call this monkeys. People are bringing you monkeys. So what it means is that they bring you a monkey, and then after a while you end up with a desk full of monkeys, because people are bringing you these monkeys. They want to take the monkey off their back and put it onto your back. So the G.R.O.W model is very powerful because it gets the other person to take responsibility for their issue. And so therefore, if you launch into this coaching session, conversation with people, you will give them a chance to think about their own issue without you resolving it directly. In other words, what you're doing is you're helping people help themselves, and that's the issue. So let's actually have a look at it a bit further and a bit deeper. I won't show the video. Whoop. By the way, there's a video short clip when you go into your learning platform, which will just reiterate what G.R.O.W is about. I'm just mindful of time. So go and have a look at the video clip, and it just gives you a sense of how it works. But if you have a look at G, which is goal, why do we start with the goal? Well, we start with the goal because normally what happens is when people come to you with an issue, they're normally going to spend 45 minutes complaining or talking about the barriers and all the things that are in the way. And because you've learnt that you're supposed to listen to people, you probably sit there quietly listening to people, and 45 minutes has gone by, and all we've done is created a downward spiral of negativity and haven't actually done anything to resolve it. So what I suggest you do is the next time that happens and you're in that conversation with someone, start the conversation by saying to the person, look, before you go on any further, just explain to me what the ideal outcome you're looking at is. So we've now got them on the front foot, because obviously if someone can't explain what the ideal outcome is, then it's going to be a pretty futile conversation. So for you to resolve this to your satisfaction, what's the ideal outcome? Now, what I've got on the screen there is you've got a number of questions you can ask. Now, you don't need to have those questions in front of you. All you've got to remember is G.R.O.W. So G, as you know, is what they're aiming to do. So you ask a couple of questions around that. In fact, you could have a coaching conversation based on 4 questions. What are you aiming to do? G. What's stopping you? R. What are your options? O. And what do you have to do next? W. So you can actually so what you're actually doing is this conversation will be shorter than remember how short the conversation was that I had with you? I was only asking you 12 questions. And I would imagine that some of the things that I was coaching you on were quite complex. So I can actually reduce the amount of time I've got with people. So that's one of the huge advantages. But the second great advantage is that I can actually increase the effectiveness of empowering the other person to resolve their own issue. So always start with what are we aiming to achieve, rather than let's get talking about all the things that are getting in the way, because obviously there are things getting in the way. I'm not saying they're not important, they are, but let's start with what you're aiming to achieve first. So you can see there's a set of questions there that would assist you with that. Then once that's been exhausted, and it shouldn't take too long to get to an idea of where they're aiming to, and of course, you being the coach in the conversation, you need to know what they think is what they think is the outcome that they're aiming for. You need to understand where they're trying to go as well. Now, obviously, for something very simple, it's not going to be a coaching session. You might just give people an answer, and that's okay. I'm talking about things that are a little bit more complicated. So a coaching conversation is something that's obviously a bit more complicated than just a simple request or whatever. Then once we've completed the G, I'm now moving into the R. So now I'm going to talk about the reality. And there's some questions on your screen around that. So what you're doing here is you're asking people, what are the barriers that are getting in the way to now you may know what the barriers are. That's not the point. The point is you're getting them to articulate in the conversation what their barriers are. What are the barriers? So get them to share those barriers with you. Now, the key thing there is to try to get them to share the main barriers, because otherwise we're going to talk about a whole lot of peripheral things that have got absolutely nothing to do with really resolving it. So I like the question that I asked you, what is the main barrier getting in the way of resolving this issue? Right? Because obviously if you can deal with the main barrier, then the other barriers, of course, are probably less significant, and therefore you're going to make some progress. All right, so the focus is on the main barriers. Now, if someone says something that's quite, it's obviously not a barrier, you can just gently ask them the question and say, look, is that really a barrier, or is it just a frustration? And then you can bring it back and say, let's just talk about the main barriers here that are preventing you from achieving whatever it is you want to achieve, which you've told me about because you've asked them to grow, you've asked them the goal. Now, once I've done that, what I've actually done is I've created a nice division between where they want to go and where they are now. So there's a gap. There's a gap there, and I've created that gap by having these conversations, getting to the R stage. That gap's important because we want to separate where they want to go with what's stopping them, basically. So that's why the G and the R are really important. So if someone comes to you and they start talking about, just say, well, just stop for a moment. First of all, before you go any further, it's not that I'm not interested. I'd just like to know, what does success look like, or what are you aiming to achieve here? And then get them to share that, and then just say, okay, now tell me what the main barriers are that are getting in the way. You'll find that'll reduce the conversation significantly and be quite effective. Now we get to the hard part. Now the hard part, not for them, this is the hard part for you, because you're going to ask them what the options are. Now, of course, they've come to you because they think that you're going to give them the options. But the reality is, you've got to stop giving them the options and get them to come up with the options. Now, they might say to you, well, look, that's why I'm coming to you, because I thought you'd give me an option, and say, well, look, my job is to help you get the options. It's not my job to necessarily give you the options. So what do you think might be an option that's open to you? Because it really, if the person has no options open to them, what that tells you is they're 100% dependent upon you, which is not good. It might seem fine in the beginning because it looks like you've felt there's a feeling of need there, but the reality is you're there to help them help themselves. You're not there to help them. So let them articulate the options. It's bite your tongue until it bleeds, because I know you know what the options are. The question is not whether you know what the options are. The question is, do they know what the options are? Get them to share. Ask them what the other options are. You'll notice it's plural. Look for several options that are open at this point, you see. So explore those options with people, but bite your tongue until it bleeds. It's not your job to jump in and save them at this point in the conversation. The more you can get them to articulate the options, the more effective the conversation will be, ironically. And you might say, I just want to get them off my back because I've got all this work to do and I'll just give them the answer. That's fine, but all you're going to do is train people to keep coming back to you every single time they've got a problem. And that's going to take more time, not save time, if that makes sense. All right? So ask them what options they've got. And then the last part of the exercise is to ask them what next, or what's the first step that you need to take. So this is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. So this is about getting them to commit to a course of action that will help them to resolve it. You're still there in a supporting role in the conversation, but what you're trying to do is to get them to take and commit to a course of action. So there's some questions on your screen there that'll help you with that. Of course, these are already in your learning platform, so you can go in there and have a look at that as well. So, and then you might, a nice question to ask at the end of your coaching conversation is, how can I support you? And you might be pleasantly surprised that people might say to you, well, you're already supporting me by, talking it through with me. I wouldn't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you get that sort of response. So the job is, you can see, to make them less reliant on you, to help them think for themselves, to help them take responsibility for a course of action, so that you can, you're then there as a coach in this type of conversation. Coaching is not spoon-feeding people and giving them the answer. I'm sure you'd be aware of that. So, folks, what questions would you like to ask me at this point? Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Are there any observations that you'd like to ask? Just share them in the question box there. What would you like to ask in relation to this G.R.O.W model, and how you might use it in your everyday conversations with people? I'll just wait for you to formulate those. I'll just pursue this a bit further. So when could you use this? Now, there's lots of opportunities to use this. You could use it during a check-in, but remember, not every check-in needs a coaching session. But it might just come up that there's an issue that's on the table during your check-ins. Then why not then launch straight into G.R.O.W? I've got a number of my clients out there that have got G.R.O.W written on a whiteboard behind them, or they've got it on their computer screen, or they've got it on a post-it note somewhere, just to remind them that the next time somebody asks me something, and of course you can do it on the phone, you can do it the way we're doing it now, you can do it on a Zoom call, whatever. You can use this in the corridor, you can use it in between check-ins. This can be a skill development approach that you can use as a conversation. At the end of a project, of course, you can use it as a debrief as well. Or when someone comes to you with a problem that they want you to resolve, they want you to resolve it, but you know at this stage, hopefully, that your job is not to make people totally dependent on you. That's not your job. Your job is to actually enable them to resolve their own issues, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, so you know what your homework is, don't you? Your homework is I want you to go away and I want you to practice G.R.O.W every time you find the opportunity over the next fortnight, because it's a fortnight between now and our next session, which is unit number 4. I want you to practice, 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 practice. It'll feel a bit funny at the start. Don't worry about it. Look, I'll tell you the good news. Once you get through one G.R.O.W conversation with people, that person, before they come to you for the next problem, will either not come to you because they've already thought it through, or if they do come to you, they've already thought it through partially. Why? Because they already know you're going to ask them a number of questions to help them help themselves. So you've actually got a number of monkeys off your back. It's saving you heaps of time. It's actually what your job is as a leader, is to coach people when they need to be coached. All right, any questions at this point? Any comments, any observations? So have any of you tried G.R.O.W before? I know some of you, this is not new. You've seen this model before. I think for some of you it may be new. Any observations? Go to the question box. We've still got a few minutes before we finish up. No? All good? Okay. All right. So let me just launch into our program again and just see where we've come from and where we're going. We've just got a comment here. Okay. Kelly says, never tried it before, but definitely going to use it moving forward. Good on you, Kelly. Look, you'd be amazed at how easy it is. All right. And look, if you're feeling a bit self-conscious about it, just say to the other person, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions so that I can help you solve this issue? That's a great way to start. No one's going to say no to that, are they? And then, of course, you can launch into G.R.O.W. Kelly's following up saying, I'm so used to people coming to me wanting me to solve their problems. Absolutely, Kelly. And, you know, unfortunately, the truth is a lot of us are in the same boat. And the reason for that is that we are too quick to answer people's questions. That's not our job. We're not there to answer people's questions. Leaders are in the business of asking questions, not answering questions. Think about it. That's actually what leaders are there for. So your job is not to answer questions every time they come to you, because people will never be enabled to resolve their own problems, and they'll just keep coming back to you time and time again. And you'll feel terribly embarrassed if you don't answer them, because you've always got into the habit of it. So you've got to break the cycle. And Kelly, I think you're getting the message that that's exactly what you have to do. So well done. All right, so folks, we've talked about being an authentic leader, and I shared with you the 5 pillars of authentic conversation in Unit 1. I shared with you the 5 conversations framework as a check-in methodology. You can also use it as a replacement for the performance review. And if you're interested in doing that, contact me offline and I can assist you with that. Today we've talked about the G.R.O.W model as part of the coaching conversation. So in a fortnight, we're going to come to the visioning and the visioning conversation. We're going to talk about that. Then Unit 5, we're going to talk about encouraging conversations, and then, of course, the relationship building conversations. So, folks, that's it from me. I hope you got something useful out of that. I hope I've actually helped you perhaps think through a little bit more about the issue that I coached you on. I hope that's been useful. So what I'd encourage you to do now, I'll be sending you out an email shortly, and in the email, I'll just give you the links to the other 3 units. But you can, and then I'll also be uploading the video for today's session. So I'll be uploading that to the learning platform. It won't go in straight away. It'll be in there in the next hour or so. And of course, you can go in and there's a whole lot of resources that you can use in the learning platform just to get your head around this whole coaching conversation. And of course, next time, and so go in there. I encourage you to use the learning platform. Do it sooner than later, because if you don't do it sooner, you may forget about it and get distracted by other things. So thanks, folks. All the best for the rest of the week, and we'll catch up in a fortnight. And thank you very much, everyone, and wish you a fantastic week. Thank you and goodbye.